We are focused on helping people navigate long-term care and helping to make long-term care, simplified and dignified. So if you think about right now, someone's, they're getting older. We're not talking about acute conditions where you have a heart attack and you need to get your health care immediately addressed. We're thinking about somebody who's older, not necessarily older, but they have condition or situation where they need help with activities of daily living.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Linda Watch. She's the Director of Marketing Content at CareScout. Linda, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here today.
Yeah, excited to have you. So Linda, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been in healthcare marketing for over 20 years. So ever since digital marketing first started to become a thing, I was there working on it. Started by working inside of hospitals, but sort of expanded where I worked within healthcare, worked for a digital agency, working with every type of healthcare client, and then moved back client side and was focused on senior living, long-term care and caregiving support, and really looking at the older adult population and their care needs. And that's where I am now and really enjoying the work that I do.
Interesting. So it sounds like you've had an interesting career kind of bringing you to CareScout. Tell me a little bit more about CareScout.
CareScout is doing something that our country really needs. So we are focused on helping people navigate long-term care and helping to make long-term care, simplified and dignified. So if you think about right now, someone's, they're getting older. We're not talking about acute conditions where you have a heart attack and you need to get your health care immediately addressed. We're thinking about somebody who's older, not necessarily older, but they have condition or situation where they need help with activities of daily living. So it could be getting dressed, it could be eating, showering, it could be one of those, it could be multiple of those. But basically they need help with daily living. And it's a difficult situation to be in because you feel like you're losing your independence, your sense of who you are. And usually you have, some type of family member or other friend or caregiver who's helping you to navigate this, and you don't know where to turn because everything's so disconnected. So you have all your doctor appointments, but then maybe you need help with home care or transportation or medications or whatever it might be, and trying to bring it all together. It's really difficult. Sometimes you're getting care, you feel like you're losing your dignity when somebody has to help you take a shower. It's really hard. And so we are looking to support both the caregivers and the care recipients who are in this stage of life, so that they can really be who they are. And so we talk about person-centered care of not just, what do you need for safety and health, but what do you need to continue being the person that you are and always have been? What are your passions? What are your values? What are your goals? And they're going to change because of where you are in your life, but you still, you're still a human being with individuality, and we want to honor that and bring that forward. So we're really working with long-term care providers who are focused on that and really committed to helping people continue to live with dignity and purpose and be who they are.
I think that's, it's a very difficult field to be in, working with, people who are, getting older. And I'm very cautious of the words that I choose because I was listening to what you were saying, and you were very meticulous on the words that you choose to use about caregiver, care recipient, and then also too, not calling, like using the term like elderly or things like that. Talk to me about the choice in words and why that's so important in not only your role, but also for CareScout.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talk about bringing dignity and respect to these older adults in this stage in their life. and they feel like they're losing their independence. So part of how we bring dignity to them is thinking about the words that we use. And so we're very user-centered in our approach. We do a lot of user testing. We do focus groups, surveys, things like that. And one of the things that we did was surveys around what people at this stage of life want to be called. They don't like the word elderly because it suggests that they're frail, that they're not taking care of themselves, that they can sort of be pushed aside, and we don't care about them. But when you say older adults, that's a word that feels to them like they still have agency, that they're still, they're adults, they're just older, right? They're still human beings. They're still in the category of human beings that we're going to pay attention to. And so to them, it gives them a little bit more agency. They feel more respected. Other words that we tested were words like senior or even like aging adult, and a bunch of others. And we'd ask them too, like, do you have a word that we didn't think of that you would use? And older adult just won far and away. So we respect that. That's what they want to hear. And, we also talk about things like, the aging journey. So instead of, long-term care, that's the official word in the field. But when we're speaking to older adults, we use the word of aging care. You're aging and you're getting care. But, we want to focus on really thinking about what words matter to them and being, it's a sign of respect at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine too, as the director of marketing content, the words that you choose in your outreach and your educational resources is super important as well. And with that being said, I think previously a lot of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of other agencies or a lot of other companies or nonprofits really write their content and do their outreach towards caregivers rather than care recipients. I'm struggling with that word today. Talk to me a little bit about how your strategy is different than that of others.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's truly, it's always important to know who your audience is. And in this case, the caregiver and the care recipient, honestly, they're a team, right? If you were to talk to them, they would say we're a team. But what often happens is that, like you said, that other groups will reach to the caregiver because the caregiver is doing more of the day-to-day work around managing things. And so they think, okay, we're going to go straight to that person. And honestly, the care recipient feels that, and they feel like, well, here it is again. I'm not being treated with dignity. I don't have respect. I'm losing my independence. Everyone thinks they can manage my life, and I have no say in it. And it feels terrible. And honestly, the caregiver doesn't really like it either because they want to feel like a team. I don't know if you have children or anyone listening has children, but I have children. I remember going to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician would talk to my children about what's going on. And I knew that really they were talking to me. But it was a sign of respect or helping, my child feel like a little bit older and special and, doing that. And so, honestly, we do the same thing, is that the care recipient, that this is whose life we're talking about, right? So even though the caregiver many ways is kind of the end audience, they're making the decision, they're the one who's going to react to what we're producing most of the time. I'd say 75 to 80% of the time. At the end of the day, it's a team, and it's a sign of respect to speak to the care recipient and say, here are steps you can take, and we're talking to you, the care recipient. Here's things that you might be feeling. Here are things that you might want to address right now. And we're very careful to do that all the time, unless it's something that's very specifically about being a caregiver, in which case we're speaking to the caregiver, and that, everyone knows that makes sense.
Interesting. And I think that's a really important differentiation that I imagine really separates you from, other companies, agencies, nonprofits in the space that you're in, is really taking that. People say, that buzzword is I'm, patient centric, but you really take that little bit of a different approach, that person centric approach. And I think that's fantastic. I think that, I definitely see the difference that it's making just by reading over your content and the content that you're producing for the company. And with that being said, I think that, the content that you're producing really carries over and shows the care that caregivers and care recipients are receiving through CareScout. And I noticed online that, and I think you mentioned this previously, about there being that long-term care quality network of providers. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. And to be clear, CareScout doesn't actually provide care, but we are creating that network of providers who do provide care, and then we help help the care recipients and their care circle find that care. So yes, we are creating the CareScout Quality Network, and this is a group of long-term care providers or aging care providers who are committed to person-centered care. And you mentioned patient-centered care. So patient-centered care really does look at people as, as a patient, and what's the protocol here, and how are we going to shape this protocol. Person-centered care is really looking at them as a human being, of like, oh, this is somebody who really cares about playing chess with their friend. How are we going to make sure they still have the chance to play chess with their friend? Or it's that sort of thing. What are the things that make them feel alive in a very personal way? And so we are looking around the country to find providers who are committed to person-centered care. So quality, in a general sense, around safety and all of that, because that's important. So we don't want to disqualify that, like that's hugely important. So we're looking like that they're meeting all the safety standards, but going above and beyond, and also really showing a commitment to person-centered care. So we have a very rigorous process around how we credential each of these providers to join our network. And then once they join, we have surveys that we give twice a year to not just the care recipients, but also to the workforce within those organizations. And the idea behind it is that if the workforce isn't happy, then, honestly, they're not going to create conditions that are good for the patients or care recipients. And so we're looking at both ends of it. And person-centered care means that you are focused on, creating a workforce that has the ability to provide, that person-centered care, and that the people receiving the care really feel that. And so, we're really at the beginning stages right now of building this network and getting our site and our content out there into the world. It's, to our knowledge, we're the first ones building this network that's focused on person-centered care, rather than just saying here's a network of providers, but saying here's a network of providers who are credentialed and truly focused on person-centered care. So we're really excited about it.
I think that's fantastic. And like you said, that differentiation between patient and person-centric really goes back to that root of, being intentional with the language that you use. And I think that's really important and really, really fantastic. So, CareScout, it sounds like there has been some growth within the last few years, specifically about growing this network. Talk to me a little bit about what that has looked like.
Yeah, so CareScout has been around for a long time, and initially they were focused on providing assessments around long-term care about what your healthcare needs might be, so that you can then address them and find the appropriate care. We also have care advocates who are clinicians who have worked in this space for a long time and can help people navigate. So somebody who maybe had assessment and they know they need care, but they're not sure where to find it, or how to vet them, and even questions like, well, how do I find a walker? What do I need for a walker? So our care advocates will help them navigate all of that, and also just give them somebody to hear them, because when you're entering into this space as a caregiver or a care recipient, it can feel kind of scary of what comes next and what do I do. So having someone you can speak to. So historically, that's what CareScout has been, and now in the past year we've expanded to become much bigger than that, of really thinking about this network of providers and how we truly focus and qualify people around person-centered care, and how we build a site that will help people navigate and find quality person-centered care, and next steps, and really everything around aging and how you can age well. And so we have a very strong vision, and we see ourselves as kind of starting a movement around all of this. And honestly, we're in the very beginning stages of that movement, but getting a lot of excitement from providers, and also care recipients and their families around all of this. So we're excited about next steps. I think in 2024 there's going to be a lot more to come, and right now we're just really enjoying building this network and starting to bring it out into the world.
I think that's fantastic. Linda, I'm curious to pick your brain about, do you hear a lot of common misconceptions, whether it be about maybe the words that you use, or the older adult population in general? Any common misconceptions that stand out to you?
Misconceptions, and mean as far as how people define things, or
Just in general, like, are there in your work that you're doing every day, whether it be with CareScout or in other kind of aspects of your job, are there any common misconceptions that people think are accurate but aren't necessarily true, just that you hear often?
I mean, I think there's a lack of understanding about what the true needs are of someone within long-term care. I think there's a lot of conversations around people who have a sudden acute need, like they have, a heart attack or a stroke, and they go into, the emergency room or whatever, and there's all these doctors that come into play. And I don't think there's an understanding of what happens after that. So, this immediate healthcare, urgent need has been addressed, or emergency need has been addressed. But you're not done. It could be cancer, it could be, any kind of like major health scare that happens, and it gets addressed and people think, oh, well, you're better now. And so I think the misconception is that, well, no, there's these long-term needs that come out of that, that need to be addressed, often for the rest of your life, or maybe just a period of time. And it could be rehabilitation. It could be, again, you just, for the rest of your life, you're not able to walk as much, or, showering becomes difficult, or whatever it might be. And so really having a conversation around that is important, of, well, what does that look like now that my life has changed? I'm still me, but my life is very different. And so I think that's just, it's a conversation that needs to happen more. And it's not that I should, live a less dignified life. It's not that but life is different. So acknowledging that, and then having that conversation about what that looks like. And then honestly, end of life care, when you reach that point of, how do you want to live up until the point where you're dying, and what does that look like? And do you want to be in a hospital with tubes in you? And maybe you do, maybe you want to have your life as long as you want, or maybe you're not, maybe you just want to live as well as you can within your home. And when you can't do that anymore, then you're ready, you're ready to pass. And so there's just conversations that need to have. And I think that's the biggest issue, is just being comfortable having those conversations. People are just so scared to even talk about it. But if you don't talk about it, how can you address it? How can you live the life that you want to be living if you're not talking about it? How can you find the team that's going to help you live that life, or help your loved one live the life they want, if you're not openly having these conversations, and preferably ahead of time? Like, all of us, no matter what stage of life we're in, should be thinking about, well, if my physical or cognitive abilities were impaired, what would I still want to keep doing? What would be important to me? Who do I want to help me? Do I want to live at home? Am I, prefer living in a residential setting with others? Just think about it and talk about it. It's an important conversation.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, Linda, I think this has been a terrific conversation. As we start to wrap up, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, whether it be about CareScout, about, your role, anything that you want to leave our listeners with, advice, anything like that?
I just say, I think it's the conversations are important. I think that's a big piece of what we want to do, is to really, when you see anybody, just understand there's a human being there, and they have a story, and respect that story, and find out how you can help them to keep being who they are, no matter what stage of life they're in, and know that could be you or your loved one someday. And have the conversations and be ready for it, and remember to see them as they want to be seen, not through whatever lens you may have on at that moment.
Yeah. Well, Linda, I think this was a terrific conversation, very insightful. I appreciate the emphasis on communication and language and words chosen. I think that this was, like I said, terrific. Really appreciate you being on Business Ninjas today.
Thank you for having me here. It's been great talking with you.
Yeah, great to have you.